welcome to my YouTube video. My name's Suzanne Bryan and I'm a TKGA certified master hand knitter. In this video I'm going to demonstrate 3 different methods for seaming rows to rows. This one is mattress stitch, this is back stitch, and this is a crocheted slip stitch crocheted seam. So stay tuned and I'm going to demonstrate all 3 of these. The first 2 pieces that we're going to seam together, we're going to use the mattress stitch, and this is worked with the right sides facing up with the swatches side by side. I'm going to start at the bottom and work up. We're working between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in from the edge. I'm going to start by making a figure 8, and you do that by coming up directly above the cast on from back to front between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in. You do the, and you can start on either side. I just happen to start on the right side. I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. I'm coming up right above the cast on edge between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in from the edge. Then you come back to the same side over here and you come up in the same spot from back to front. This is what creates the figure 8. And if you turn it on its side, you can see the figure 8. And you can pull that together. That brings the 2 cast on edges together and gives you a smooth line across here so there's no jog. Now we're going to start the mattress stitch. So we've just worked on the right half. We're going to come over to the left half. We go underneath in the same spot where we came up from the front to the back, under the strand that's going between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in. That's called the bar. So you're going under the bar, and then you come over to this side, go in the same spot where you previously came up, go under the first bar, go back here, go under and 1 bar. Now some people go under 2 bars. You can if you want. I think it looks tidier if you just go under 1 bar. And some people slip the first stitch of a row, and in that case you can only go under every other stitch. Right now I'm using every stitch, the bar between every stitch. And you continue going back and forth. This is the mattress stitch. Going under the next bar, and once you have an inch or so done, you can pull it together. You kind of zip it closed, and I'm going to do that in a second. You want to be very careful to not seam through your seaming thread, because if you do, when you go to pull the seam together, the yarn can't slide. It'll get stuck on itself. So now we're going to zip this together. So you hold on to the tail right here, and you pull on the other end, and it just zips up, and it matches perfectly across the bottom. The stitches flow across the seam without interruption. So I'm going to go ahead and work the rest of this swatch, and we'll come back and take a look at it, okay? Okay, so I'm getting near the top. I've been working the mattress stitch back and forth on each piece. I'm going to show you how I finished the top off. It's similar to the figure 8, not quite exactly the same, but it creates a nice smooth edge at the top. So this is good to use when your edges are a finished edge. For example, if this was a finished edge or this was a finished edge, this is a good method to use. We're going to go under the last bar on each side, and we're going to pull it closed. Let's see if there's, we can go under 1 more bar here. We're going to zip it closed. So it makes a nice looking seam. Then you go to close it off and finish it at the top. You go from front to back underneath the bind off on this side. And from front to back under the bind off on this side. And what that's going to do is give you a nice smooth edge at the top. It aligns both pieces going straight across the top. So that is the mattress stitch swatch. This swatch I'm going to demonstrate a back stitch seam. So we have our two pieces just like we did for the mattress stitch. This time I'm going to put them right sides together, wrong sides facing out. We have the bind off edges at the top, cast on edges at the bottom. And I've threaded my needle with my seaming thread. And again, we're going to work between the selvage stitch and the next stitch in. Let me enlarge this for you. So there's the selvage stitch. We're going to work in the space between the selvage stitch and the first column in. Here's the selvage stitch here. Here's the first column in. We're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to start in back stitch. You start ahead of where you're going to. The bottom of our seam is going to be here, so we're going to start a little bit ahead of that and come up from the back to the front. We're going between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in. And you're going to leave a tail. And then you go down. We're going down towards the cast on edge. Take your needle down. So it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're going to go up 2 steps. And come back. This is why it's called back stitch. So here we came up right here and went back here. We're going to come up here and go back here. Now it can be, it's harder to figure out where you're going to go because you can't see both pieces of the fabric. You can really only see the top piece, but you can see how I'm making these stitches here. I'm going to come up here. Go down here. We're making a line. Come up here, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Two steps forward, 1 step back. Going straight through. So I'm going to continue this along this edge till I get up to here, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so I'm getting up close to the top, still working on this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This is the same as just sewing on regular fabric. It's a back stitch, it's the same thing. And you could make longer stitches if you want. It depends on how secure you need your seam to be. I like to go over each bar, as I showed you with the mattress stitch. Okay. Now we're going to see what it looks like on the inside. We're going to take this and open it up. There's some places where it's not perfect. I went over a stitch here. Do you see that? I went in a little bit too far. Down here it looks really good. Kind of messed up in here. But it's really hard to see where you're going when you have the 2 pieces of fabric together. We'll compare all 3 in a minute. This is the last of the three swatches to seam together. Again, I have the bind off edge at the top. We're going to, when you do a crochet seam, you have the right sides together again, just like you do with the back stitch. And you're going to aim for going between the selvage stitch and the first stitch in on both pieces. We start by bringing a loop through. You use your crochet hook. The hook needs to be small enough to go under these between the stitches, but big enough to catch your yarn. So it does not need to be the same size as your knitting needle, but it just needs to be big enough to catch the yarn. So we're going to pull a loop through. Then we're going to go up one bar on each piece, pull another loop through, and pull it through that first loop. Then it's easier on this because you can actually separate the pieces and make sure you're going through one stitch on each side, in one stitch, just between the selvage stitch and the next stitch in. You pull it through the crochet hook. So you're making it's a slip stitch crochet. So it makes this chain on this side right here. And this is pretty fast and pretty accurate because you can see exactly where you're putting the crochet hook through. So I'll work this up and be back in a second. Okay, I'm getting up to the top of the crocheted, slip stitch crocheted seam. And I like it because I can see exactly where to put the crochet hook through each time. And this is the last one. And then you would just finish it off like this. That looks pretty nice. That looks as nice as the mattress stitch. Let's compare all three now. So we've got the mattress stitch, then we've got the back stitch, and then we have the crocheted stitch. Let's see what we think. I like this one because it makes the top and bottom match perfectly. Although the crochet looks pretty good, but it's a little bit gappy at the bottom, a little bit gappy at the top. But it looks good. When you turn this one over, you do have a little bit of bulk from those selvage stitches being turned to the back of the work. This one is a little messy along here, and you're missing part of the stitches. I really like the perfection of all the stitches showing and the seam being virtually invisible. It is not invisible here. We turn it to the back side, we still have, and we have a lot of extra bulk here from the back stitch. It gives you extra yarn on the back of the swatch, so it does create some extra bulk. Here's the crocheted. Looks really good on the front. We have a little gappy at the top, little gappy at the bottom. The back side, we do have both the selvage columns on the back, and we also have that chain column there, which also gives you extra bulk. Looks good this way. This one's tighter this way. This one you can see the crochet through. This one's virtually invisible. Do you see that? I'm pulling it apart. Virtually invisible. There's a couple places you can see my white yarn right there. Other than that, this one, kind of wonky. This one, you can see the crocheted stitches. Let's compare them this way. It's got a little bit of stretch, a little bit of stretch, little bit of stretch. The stretchiness lengthwise is about the same. So it's up to you which you prefer. I would say this one's my favorite. Depends on the project. You know, I think this would be my second favorite. This one I think I would not do because it's just really hard when you can't see. You have this folded and you're sewing through. It's hard to see that you're going through the right spot on the second fabric. I'm also going to have a video up shortly comparing seaming stitches to stitches, the swatches this way, like this, seaming this way, with these three methods. I'm going to compare these three methods also with seaming stitches to stitches. If you like my YouTube videos, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I do have a mailing list at Constant Contact, and I put a link to that down below the video in the description if you'd like to be on my mailing list and learn about my tutorials and classes and other things that I offer. Be sure to click down there and join the mailing list. And we'll see you next time. Happy knitting!